The morning they pinned the medal to my chest, my mother took a photo and sent it to our family group chat with one caption: "Guess the Army gives these out for participation now." I saw it on my phone 30 seconds after the ceremony ended. My commanding officer was still shaking my hand. My mother was standing 15 feet away, smiling at me like nothing had happened. That was the day I understood, completely and without any room left for doubt, that the people who raised me had never once been in my corner. My name is Mara. I'm a special agent with the FBI's Cybercrimes Division, and I have been since I was 26 years old. I grew up in a small city in western Pennsylvania, the kind of place where your family name opens doors or closes them, and mine had always done the latter, at least for me. My father owned a private security consulting firm, Callaway Security Solutions, which had contracts with a dozen mid-sized financial institutions across the Mid-Atlantic. My older brother, Derek, worked alongside him. My mother handled the firm's client relations. My younger sister, Jenna, was finishing her MBA and being groomed to take over the marketing side of the business. Then there was me. I had left for Quantico at 23, after 2 years at the Pittsburgh field office as a support analyst. I had worked myself into the ground to get there. I had studied until my eyes burned. I had run the qualifying courses until my knees ached every morning. I had done everything right, and I had done it alone, because when I told my father at the dinner table that I wanted to join the bureau, he had put down his fork, looked at me the way you look at a car that won't start, and said, "That's not a real career for someone like you, Mara." He meant a woman. He meant his daughter. He meant someone who, in his estimation, was supposed to find a husband, maybe work a sensible office job, and eventually fold herself into the fabric of Callaway Security Solutions the way the rest of them had. I became a special agent anyway. The ceremony that morning was for a commendation I had received for my work on a 2-year investigation into a financial data breach that had compromised the personal information of over 400,000 people across 11 states. It was the kind of case that doesn't make the news because the damage is invisible. Numbers on a screen, stolen identities, retirement accounts drained slowly enough that people don't notice until it's too late. My team had traced the breach back to a coordinated insider threat operation, prosecuted 3 suspects, and recovered evidence that led to the dismantling of a trafficking network that had been using the stolen data as leverage. It was the most significant work of my career. My field office director had invited my family personally. He had called my mother himself, which I only learned later, and told her this was a rare honor and that he hoped they would come. They came. All 4 of them. My father in a pressed blazer, looking like he was attending a business conference he hadn't wanted to book. My mother with her phone already in her hand, Derek standing with his arms folded, scanning the room with the vague contempt he reserved for anything that wasn't his. And Jenna, who had always been the softest of them and who I had always believed, somewhere deep down, was the one who might eventually choose differently. My director gave a speech. He said my name. He called me meticulous, relentless, and exceptionally brave. He said the bureau was lucky to have me. I glanced at my father when he said that. My father was checking his watch. Afterward, at the reception in the main conference room, my mother found me near the coffee station and hugged me with one arm in that way she had efficient, obligatory, like shaking someone's hand. "It's a nice little award," she said. "Derek just landed the Hartwell account, you know. Dad's talking about expanding the DC office." I smiled. I said that was great. I excused myself to speak with a colleague. What I didn't know then, what I would not know for another 3 days, was that Callaway Security Solutions had been under investigation by my own division for 14 months. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was eating leftover Thai food at my kitchen table in Arlington, Virginia. It was from my supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Renata Osei, and when I saw her name on my phone at 8:47 p.m., my stomach dropped before I even answered. "Mara," she said, "I need you to come in. Tonight." The field office was mostly empty when I arrived. Renata was in the 3rd-floor conference room, with 2 agents I recognized from the Financial Crimes Unit agent Torella, and a newer agent named Bishop, and a woman from the DOJ who introduced herself only by her last name, Caldwell. They had a file on the table. It was thick. Renata slid it toward me and let me open it myself. The first page had my father's name on it. Callaway Security Solutions has been operating a secondary data brokerage operation since approximately 2019, Renata said. Her voice was steady and careful the way it gets when she is delivering information she knows will land hard. They've been selling client vulnerability data, essentially, the security gaps in their clients' systems to third-party buyers. Some of those buyers have been identified as foreign-linked financial crime syndicates. One of them is connected to the same network you helped dismantle last year. I stared at the page. I read my father's name again. The firm has 14 institutional clients, Agent Torella said. 3 of them are federally insured. That makes this a federal matter. How long have you known? I asked. The investigation opened 18 months ago, Renata said. You've been kept outside it entirely. Firewall protocol. We needed to tell you now because she paused. Because one of the transaction records we recovered last week references an account registered to Derek Calloway and a shell company with a registered agent address that matches your parents' home in Sewickley. She let that sit. Your brother is not a peripheral figure in this, Mara. He appears to be the primary architect of the secondary operation. Your father provided access and client relationships. We have reason to believe your mother was aware. I set the file down on the table. I put my hands flat on the surface to keep them still. What do you need from me? I said. Caldwell from DOJ leaned forward. Nothing operational. You are not on this case, and you will not be. What we need is your awareness, because it's possible that in the coming weeks, members of your family may attempt to contact you in ways that could compromise the investigation. If that happens, you are required to report it immediately. And if I don't hear from them, then you go about your work, and you let us do ours. I drove home in the dark. I sat in my car outside my apartment building for 20 minutes before I went inside. I thought about my father's hand on my shoulder at every holiday dinner when he made his toast and said, "The family is everything, and everything is the family." I thought about how he had said that while selling other people's financial security to criminals. I thought about Derek, who had called me after my commendation ceremony and said, "Nice job, Mara, very cute." I had thought he was being dismissive. I realized now he might have been afraid. I went inside. I did not call my mother. I did not call my father. I did not call Jenna. I made a second cup of coffee and I opened my laptop and I worked until 3 in the morning, because that is the only way I have ever known how to survive the things I can't control. For the next 6 weeks, I lived 2 lives. During the day, I worked my cases. I went to briefings, I ate lunch with my colleagues and laughed at the right moments and filed my reports on time. I was, to every visible measure, fine. At night, I turned things over in my mind the way you can't stop doing when the ground has shifted under you and you haven't told anyone. My mother called twice. Both times she wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. Was I coming home? Derek and his girlfriend were coming, and Jenna was bringing a friend from school, and Dad had reserved a table at the club for Saturday night, and it would be nice if the whole family was there for once. I said I wasn't sure about my schedule. I said I would let her know. What I wanted to say was, I know what you've done. I know about the shell company. I know Derek has been selling your clients' vulnerabilities to people who use that information to steal from ordinary people who trusted you. I know Dad signed off on it. And I know that you know, because you have never in your life been in the dark about anything that happened inside that firm. But I didn't say any of that. I said I would let her know about Thanksgiving. Jenna called once, late on a Wednesday. She sounded strange, quieter than usual, a tightness in her voice that she was trying to cover. She asked me how I was doing. She asked if I had heard anything interesting at work lately. She asked it casually, but it wasn't casual, and I felt the hair on my arms rise. Nothing unusual, I said. Same cases as always. There was a pause. Jenna, I said, is there something you want to tell me? Another pause. Longer. No, she said. I was just calling to catch up. I miss you. She hung up 11 minutes into the conversation. I filed a report of the call to Renata the same night. The arrest warrants were executed on a Thursday morning in November, 43 days after my Tuesday night meeting in the conference room. I was not there. I had been explicitly excluded from anything related to the operation, which I understood and agreed with, and which did not make it any easier to sit at my desk at 7 in the morning, watching the clock, knowing what was happening 280 miles away in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. Renata came to my office at 9:15 and closed the door behind her. It went clean, she said. Your father and brother were taken into custody at the firm's downtown office. Your mother was arrested at the house. She paused. Jenna was there too. She wasn't arrested, but she's been brought in for questioning. We have evidence she was aware of the operation and failed to report it. Whether that rises to the level of charges is something the DOJ will determine. I looked at my hands. There's something else. Renata said. When agents executed the warrant at the house, they found a document in your father's home office. It's a memo he wrote to Derek, dated 4 months ago. She set a photograph of the document on my desk. He was trying to figure out whether your involvement in last year's data breach investigation could expose the secondary operation. He writes, and I'm quoting directly here, that you were a liability that needed to be managed, and asked Derek to look into whether there was a way to use your security clearance access against you to frame a data pull as unauthorized and trigger an internal affairs review. I read it. I read it again. My father had written, in his own hand, that his daughter, who had given her entire adult life to this work, was a liability. He had considered using my career against me as a shield for his crimes. He had sat across from me at that reception with a piece of cake and a checked watch, and he had been thinking about how to destroy me. I'm okay, I said, before Renata could ask. I know you are, she said. I just wanted to make sure you heard it from me first. The federal proceedings moved faster than most people expect when the evidence is as organized as it was. My father and Derek were indicted on 17 counts, including wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and aiding a foreign-linked criminal enterprise. The prosecutors were thorough and methodical, and they had 14 months of documented evidence. My mother was charged with 4 counts of conspiracy and obstruction. She had not been an architect of the scheme, but she had known, and she had said nothing, and in the eyes of the law that mattered. Jenna was not charged. There was evidence of awareness, but not of active participation. And after extensive interviews, the DOJ determined that cooperation, not prosecution, was the appropriate path. She gave a full statement. She gave them everything she knew, which turned out to be more than anyone had realized. She called me the night after her final DOJ interview. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her for the first 2 minutes. I didn't know the whole thing, she said. I want you to know that. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was happening with the client data, but I didn't know how far it went, and I didn't know about the memo. About what Dad said about you. I believe you, I said. Do you? Yes. And I did. Jenna had never been cruel. She had been cowardly, which is different. And she had paid a price for it. I should have called you, she said. When I first suspected something, I should have called you and told you. Yes, I said. You should have. She cried harder. I let her. I love you, she said. I love you too, I said. But it's going to be a while before things feel normal between us. I think you know that. She said she did. My father pleaded not guilty, and then, 3 weeks before trial, pleaded guilty to 9 of the 17 counts, as part of a negotiated agreement. Derek went to trial and was convicted on 14 counts. My father was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Derek received 16. My mother received 3 years of supervised release and a substantial fine. I was not in the courtroom for any of it. I had been advised not to attend, and I agreed. There was nothing I needed to see. I had read every document. I knew every number. I had done my own quiet inventory of the damage the 412 clients whose vulnerability data had been sold, the financial institutions that had spent millions patching breaches that never should have happened, the individual account holders who had never known why their information suddenly appeared on the dark web, and I had made peace with the fact that justice, when it finally arrived, would never fully balance that ledger. But it was still justice. 3 months after the sentencing, I was approved for a lateral transfer to the FBI's field office in Pittsburgh. Part of the reason was professional. There was a senior analyst position opening up that my director thought was the right next step. Part of the reason was simpler. I wanted to go home, not to my parents' home. To the city I had grown up in, which was mine long before it was theirs. On my last day in the Arlington office, Renata walked me out to the parking garage. She is not a sentimental person, and neither am I, which is one of the reasons we have always understood each other. You conducted yourself with extraordinary integrity throughout this entire situation, she said. I didn't have a choice, I said. Everyone has a choice, she said. That's exactly what I mean. She shook my hand. I drove north. There is a firm in Pittsburgh, now small, 2 employees, operating out of an office in East Liberty. It's called Harlow Cyber Solutions. I started it 8 months after my transfer. Quietly, in the hours after work and on weekends. Building it piece by piece the way I have built everything in my life. It provides pro bono cybersecurity assessments for small nonprofits and community organizations across Western Pennsylvania. Organizations that can't afford to protect themselves. Organizations that are exactly the kind of target that firms like Callaway Security Solutions were supposed to guard. I named it Harlow, which was my grandmother's maiden name, because she was the only person in my family who ever told me, without qualification, that I was going to be extraordinary. She said it when I was 9 years old and had come home from school crying because a teacher had told me that girls weren't naturally suited to mathematics. She had dried my face with a dish towel and said, "Mara, that man is a fool, and you are going to be extraordinary. Now sit down and I'll make you something to eat." She died when I was 19. She never saw any of this. I think she would have understood all of it. People ask me sometimes, colleagues, the occasional journalist, a few friends who know pieces of the story, whether I regret the way things ended. Whether there was a version of this where I could have warned my family, where I could have given them a chance to stop, to confess, to come to me before the warrants were signed. The honest answer is that I thought about it. In those 6 weeks, in the dark of my apartment with my coffee going cold, I turned that question over dozens of times. There was a version of me who could have called my father and said, "I know. Stop. Come forward. I'll help you." But I am an FBI agent. I took an oath. And the people my family was helping were stealing from real people, people who worked hard their whole lives and trusted that someone was watching out for them. My father knew that. He did it anyway. He looked at 400,000 strangers and decided they mattered less than his margins. And he looked at me, his daughter, and decided I was a liability. The peace I have now didn't arrive all at once. It came in small pieces, the way most things worth keeping do slowly. With work, with the help of a very good therapist in Squirrel Hill who has a gift for asking the right question at the right moment. The piece that came last, and the one that settled deepest, was this. I don't need them to understand what I did. I don't need them to forgive me for it, or to respect it, or to tell me I was right. I did my job. I kept my oath. I protected people who will never know my name. That is enough. It has always been enough. It just took me a while to believe it.